Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, March the 1st, year 2017. This is show number 1126. Thank you guys very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening or in the archive as you so choose to listen to the show. My name is Shawn King. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. We're going to talk about the Apple shareholder meeting. Jim actually attended the Apple shareholder meeting earlier this week. We'll talk to him about his thoughts about that, how it worked for him, what he was there for, why he managed to get in. You'd think a guy like Jim wouldn't be allowed, with the way he looks and things like that, to actually be in that kind of thing. So we'll see. We'll find out why he managed to get in there. We're also going to talk about Uber with Jim. I know Jim has been a fan of Uber over the years, and we'll find out whether he's still a fan of Uber. He really shouldn't be. It's a company that's imploding as we speak. I mean, it is just a complete mess, and it should this latest incident with the CEO yelling at one of the Uber drivers on videos and talking about, I need to grow up. No, you should have been a frickin' grown up long before. I'm talking about that. We'll also talk about SpaceX. You hear the story that SpaceX, they are sometime next year, in theory, they've missed a lot of deadlines, but sometime next year, in theory, they're sending two people literally around the moon. They're going to launch two humans and going to send them into space further than anyone has gone in the last 40 years. Would you go? The price is around $75 million per person. Let's say it was free. If it was free, would you go? Send me emails to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. I think I would. We'll talk to Jim about that. Jim's already said he would never go. But we'll talk to him about that. And then on the starting point photography segment later on in the show, we're going to talk about mirrorless cameras. Got a couple of questions for folks about what are the pros and cons of mirrorless cameras versus DSLRs. And they're kind of the same thing. Mirrorless are kind of like DSLRs, but I'll talk to you about the differences and the pros and cons of a mirrorless camera. I promised Mo I was going to talk about him right off the top of the show, and this is that segment, Mo. I'm teasing Mo. It's interesting. I posted this up on The Loop. Learn to bargain before you buy these three big-ticket items, and negotiating could save you thousands. And Mo commented on the story. I wrote in the story, we don't have a haggling mentality in North America. And Mo wrote, I've never learned to haggle. And that struck me as kind of interesting because it's true that we don't haggle very much in North America. It's very, very common in Europe, especially in Southeast Asia and Africa and the Middle East. It's a known quantity. You never pay sticker price for anything in those places. But here in North America, we generally don't do it, even though it can save us money. And I know I've done it on big ticket items, furniture and motorcycles. And it's not a whole lot to it, Mo. You don't have to learn to haggle. Excuse me, I've got the burps. Like I said to Mo in the comments on the Loop story, so you don't have to haggle so much as say, is this the best price you can offer? And if they don't lower the price, say, okay, that was more than I was willing to pay. Thank you for your time, and walk away. 99% of the time, I can almost guarantee you in these situations, furniture, cars, that kind of stuff, you'll be surprised how many times you'll hear the salesperson say, wait, come back, or something along those lines. Because a lot of these guys get paid on commission, and they have some leeway as to what the price can be. They know what the price is, they know what the markup is, and they know how much leeway they've got there. I've done it at Best Buy for TVs. I've done it at furniture stores for beds and dining room sets. The last dining room set I bought was like $1,000. And it was really nice. But I said to the sales guy, I said, is there any wiggle room on the price? Can you bring the price down some? He said, no, we really can't. I said, okay, thanks for your time. And I walked away because it's furniture. It's not like I can't find furniture in 7,000 other stores. It's not like this was a one-of-a-kind piece. Even if I couldn't find that exact dining room table in another store, I could find a dining room table in some other store. So as soon as I started walking away, he said, hang on a second. And he did the whole, let me talk to my manager thing. And I was like, yeah, I don't care who you talk to. And he came back and he offered $100 off. I said, no, that's just not good enough. He said, what about $200 off? I said, okay, how about $200 off and free delivery? Because that's how they were going to get me. Was they going to charge another $100 for delivery? He was like, I'll walk away, dude. I don't got to buy this dining room set right now. And eventually we got it for the $300 off. Same with the motorcycle. When I went in to buy the motorcycle, I don't know if car people do this. I know motorcyclists, I've never heard a car person say it, so I don't know if they do it. A car buyer say it. Motorcycle guys often talk about the out-the-door price, OTD, out-the-door price. And they'll walk into a dealership and say, what's the out-the-door price on this? In other words, what's the bottom line price? If I was going to pay cash right now, what would it be? Throw in whatever taxes and fees and all that kind of other shit that you guys do. What's the bottom line price? And then work from there. And like the article that I posted on the Loop said, know what the price is ahead of time or know what you're willing to pay for something. I quite often will go into a store and even for ordinary things, I'll look at an object and I'll mentally think of a price. What would I be willing to pay for that? And if I pick it up and it's more than that, I'll put it back. If I'm thinking this thing is $20 and the price is $50, I go, no, I'm not buying that. It's, too much money. So know what you're willing to pay ahead of time. Helps in haggling too. The most important thing in haggling, as Mo says, you have to be willing to walk out. You've got to be willing to walk away from the deal. You can't fall in love with a thing so much that you're willing to pay too much money for it. And I don't mean to or want to screw, especially cars or motorcycles. I don't want to screw those guys. I know they need to make a profit. But they are trying to make as much profit as they can in that situation. I get that. I understand that. It's one of the most terrifying things that we do when we buy these big ticket items, especially cars. For whatever reason, cars give us just a lot of anxiety. That's why so many dealerships have gone to this no haggle pricing thing. And they make it sound like it's a great thing for the customer, but it's not. It's a great thing for them. And I don't care if you have no haggling pricing. I'm still going to haggle. I'm not paying the price that's on that vehicle. I have a price in mind. I've done my research. The internet is fantastic for this nowadays. You can find out pretty much ballpark what a dealership paid for that car or motorcycle or boat or whatever it might be. And then you can factor in X% of their profit and say, I'm willing to give you this much money. When I bought the motorcycle in Portland, Oregon, I literally said to the dealership, you guys have this bike that's been sitting in your yard for a year and a half. The price is $14,000. I have 12. I'll give you $12,000. Oh, no, we can't do that. Okay, bye. And the guy was like, no, hang on. And I said, I've only got $12,000. I don't have anything more than $12,000. And I knew the bike was worth around $12,000. And so he said, let me go talk to the manager. Give me your number. And he called me back. It was all over the phone. He called me back and said, how about $13,000? I said, dude, I told you I've got 12. I've got 12 in cash. That's what you're going to get. That's the out the door price. You're not going to take $12,000 and say, oh, there's extra fees for this, and this. That's it. I will write you a check for $12,000 and I'll ride off on the motorcycle. And it took them about 2 or 3 days. But because I was willing to walk away from the deal, they eventually came down to that price. It's fun to kind of haggle in Europe too. I know when we were in Florence, and there was some beautiful, beautiful pottery. Assisi, some beautiful pottery. The ex wanted, and she, again being North American, wasn't a haggler, and the price was a lot of money. It was like $500 for these 4 pieces of spectacularly beautiful pottery. I said, hang on, don't pay that. Let me go talk to the guy. And eventually we got $200 off the price. And he shipped it to us back to North America. So haggle. Don't even haggle, just negotiate. You can't do it for everything. You can't go into your local grocery store and say, I'll take that bread off your hands for 10 cents off. But for big ticket stuff, especially when you go to other countries, European countries and African and Southeast Asia don't pay the sticker price for anything in those places. If you're going to buy a carpet at a bazaar in Morocco, you would never pay the price that's on it. You'd probably pay half. But again, you got to be willing to walk away. That's the most important. That's the most important thing is being able to walk out the door. Mo says, my father-in-law didn't refer to the out-the-door price, but he did say, I know what this car cost you, when he helped us get a better price on our car. And that's the other thing, too, is going with a friend helps a lot, too, especially a more knowledgeable friend. But the friend gives you that moral support, especially when they do that bullshit of, let me go speak to the manager, and walking away and going to get a coffee kind of thing. It's just all a game, but you've got to be willing to pay the game. Now, they play the game better than you do, but if you're willing, if you know the price that you want for the object, and you stick to that, they'll make their money on it. Monty says, when I was in Beijing, China, I went to a large open-air market. I listened to other English-speaking people and quickly learned I could pay a quarter or less of the listed price for an item. On my trip to Cancun, MacMan says they had a bazaar-style market area a couple of nights, and anyone with a brain tried to haggle with the vendors. Yeah, it's kind of fun, especially when you're traveling, because you're like, I'm never going to see this person again. I don't care. They're going to make their money. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Later on the show, in our Starting Point Photography segment, we're going to talk about mirrorless cameras. These nice little teeny tiny, almost point-and-shoot type cameras. The pros and cons of buying one of these smaller cameras versus a full-sized DSLR. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about Uber, about SpaceX, about the Apple shareholder meeting, all that and much more coming up. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is your Mac Life. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on this Wednesday evening or live via the archive. In our phone now, we've got our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am good. Thank you very much. You are in your natural habitat, which is?
Outside of a bar.
Outside of a bar. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me here on Wednesday evening.
It's this and then jump off a bridge or something. Or live under a bridge or whatever it is.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. You posted up on the Loop, loopinsight.com on Tuesday, notes for Apple's shareholder meeting. Are you a shareholder in Apple?
I am not.
You are not. So why are you at the shareholder meeting?
To see what juicy things Tim had to say.
Now, are press normally invited or allowed at a shareholder meeting? I thought they weren't.
They have a special area for press.
Okay.
I wasn't in the room where they were, but they have like an overflow room.
Okay.
And for media, and that's where I was.
Okay. I wasn't sure how that worked. I wasn't sure if you were sneaking. You had a glass of the door or something like that. Now
No.
this was as Tim Cook said, this was the last time they're going to be doing those shareholder meetings in one infinite loop. Next year they're moving to the theater. How many people were there approximately?
Oh God, well the inside part of the town hall, I suppose that's maybe a couple hundred people, was full, and then they did have a couple of overflow areas, but I never saw them, so I don't know how many people were in them because I was in the press room
Yeah.
that they had set up. So I don't really know. There was at least 200 because they were packed in there, and then some overflow area.
And it's a first come first serve thing for folks who may not realize this. If you own even one share of Apple, you are legally allowed to attend Apple shareholder meetings. So everyone is there, from the giant multi-million share investment groups that have it, all the way down to people who have 2, 3, 4, 5 shares at Apple, and you get to ask questions, which is really kind of interesting at a shareholder meeting. Every company does this sort of thing. That's not that unusual. They give you a state of the company. Tim Cook does, and then they go through a bunch of. Is it mostly housekeeping type votes kind of thing? These are the kind of votes that Apple does, and no one's ever going to get voted down or out, right?
Well, these are. The first thing that happens is that Tim comes out and says, welcome to the shareholder meeting. It's like literally like 30 seconds of Tim talking. And then he turns the meeting over to Bruce Sewell, who's the general counsel for Apple. And Bruce does the actual shareholders meeting. So the shareholders meeting is basically what business they have to work on.
Yeah.
So the business is that's a plane going overhead.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So basically, what they do is vote on the propositions that have come in from Apple and from shareholders. So from Apple, they said we have this proposal to keep Ernst & Young as our accounting firm. You vote on that, but the voting isn't actually done there. You send in, most people send in their votes ahead of time, and then you can still vote at the meeting, but most of the votes were like 98% to 2%. So the votes at the meeting aren't going to really make a difference. And then they vote on some shareholder proposals. For instance, there was one this year, as there is, I think, every year, for like mandatory diversity.
Yes.
And that was voted down soundly. There's others for capping executive compensation, which Apple says would put them at a disadvantage in the marketplace. That was voted down soundly. There's different things like that.
Most of these shareholder type votes are sent in by average people, but voted down by the big mutual fund groups and that kind of thing. That Joe Blow can say, "Well, Apple, you need to have more mandatory diversity," but then the company that owns 50 million shares, Warren Buffett and those kind of guys, when they put their votes in, it pretty much almost always gets voted down. What the board wants, the board gets for the most part when it comes to these kinds of shareholder initiatives, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that it's. I don't really know how it goes. I mean, is it share a vote or, I honestly don't know. I've never voted for anything, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess so. I guess it's not the board so much as maybe Wall Street voting and saying no, we don't want that.
Yeah.
But when you have a company like Apple that's been doing so well, I mean, do you really want to, force things on them that, it may not be good for the company.
Yeah, because
I don't know.
in theory, they know more about the way the company works. The idea of capping executive compensation for us, the average person, we think, well, that's good. We don't want the CEO to make stupid amounts of money, but they know that in order to attract and keep the top talent, they have to pay stupid amounts of money. So
Right.
they see things from a completely different perspective of the average everyday Joe Blow shareholder. So that kind of stuff makes sense.
And to be clear, I'm not saying diversity is not something that Apple wants.
Yep.
I'm just saying that forced diversity is, and there was one person that stood up. The person that gave the talk on basically mandatory diversity was an African American.
Yep.
And the person that stood up against it was also African American and said, sometimes these things have the opposite effect that you would want, and I would vote against it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yep. I think the most interesting part about all these things, though, is that when it comes to the Q&A, when the average person for the first time is allowed to buttonhole Tim Cook and ask him direct questions. Some of Cook's answers were very interesting. In particular, one that seems to have caught everyone's attention was when Cook talked about the Macintosh and pros, and he promised that Apple was going to be doing something with the pro market or for the Macintosh market in the very near future. Did you get a sense that I think part of the problem I have with this is that Apple's been saying this for a long time. I think it's time for them to put up or shut up. Do you agree with that? That they've said this sort of, just keep waiting long enough. It's time for them to show their cards.
Well, I think Brian Chaffin from Mac Observer wrote something about that this week, where basically that same thing. It's time to put up or shut up. We've heard this whole thing before where we care about the pros, and I don't know what's holding them back.
Yeah.
That's the thing that gets me. What is it exactly that is holding Apple back from releasing new Mac Pros?
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of folks think or assume that's because the Intel processors aren't up to snuff of Apple's standards. They're not fast enough for Apple. But we would like to hear Apple say, when Intel gives us new chips, then we'll put them in our new machines. Apple's not going to say that. But, yeah, I think after all this time with them continually saying, oh, no, we care about pros, but not actually doing anything for pros, the words sound kind of hollow after, the last time the Mac Pro was updated was, I think, now officially 4 years ago. So it's time, Tim. It's enough of the words, enough of the marketing speak, enough of he said, and quoting him, he said, you will see us do more in the pro area. The creative community is very important to us. Well, you know what? After 4 years, it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And, I think a lot of people have been waiting for Apple to do something and have kind of lost faith.
Yep. And I think it's fair. I don't think that's something that Apple can complain about anymore. That the Mac community has been very, very patient with Apple. The pros have been patient. Now, some of them are leaving, and that's completely understandable because Windows machines are as good, if not more so, than the Mac Pro. That's 4 years old. So I think Apple is slowly, not quickly, but slowly losing some of those customers, and they got to do something soon. If pros are as important, if the creative community is as important as Apple says it is, this is the year, guys. This is the year you've got to come up and prove that statement. Otherwise, I think the trickle of pros leaving for Windows will become a tsunami next year.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing that Cook said was, he said, expect us to do more and do more and more where people will view it, the iPad, as a laptop replacement, but not a Mac replacement. The Mac does so much more. He said that... you wrote, the best quote I've ever heard from Cook on the argument for making a touchscreen Mac instead of or in conjunction with an iPad came at the end of the shareholders meeting. You said, you quoted Tim, to merge these worlds, you would lose the simplicity of one and the power of the other. I think that is the strongest argument from someone at Apple as to why there will never be a merging of the OSs of iOS and Mac OS. I think that right there says it all.
Yeah. I thought that was a great statement by Tim.
I think it's important.
You know,
Go ahead.
That's what people. I didn't get it at the time. I don't get it now about having a Windows tablet.
Yeah.
I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, you know, I agree with what Tim said there.
The other thing he said that I thought was kind of odd, and I got to disagree with him, he says that 9 to 5 Mac quotes him as saying, Tim Cook calls the AirPods a cultural phenomenon. That's a little stretch, isn't it?
Well,
come on.
I mean, I really like them.
Hey, that's different. You liking them is not being a cultural phenomenon. You don't think it's a bit over the top?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, Apple is going to say what Apple is going to say. You know, I mean, they're going to make these things out to be the best thing since the last thing they released. That's what they do.
Yep.
But I really like them. I think they're great.
And be honest, I've never used them, but I've heard really good things about them. I do believe that they are a good product. I don't think they're a cultural phenomenon right now. That brings up another question. It was posted to the Loop. The folks at Colorware, a company I've used in the past out of Minnesota, is now selling black AirPods. Do you think Apple will ever create colored AirPods, non-white AirPods?
You know, I really think that I posted about this, you know.
I know.
So when I looked at them, I thought the same thing that I think of with other colored things, you know. No, I don't want it. But when I looked at those, I thought, oh my God, I want a set of purple AirPods. Really, I do. I really do. You know, so I would take a set of colored AirPods, except that, you know, I think I priced them out. I did do the colored things, and it was like $315.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
And, you know, $315 is a lot of money for a color.
Yep.
So, and I don't know how they do it. So, you know, is it going to chip off or, because, you know.
Well, I had one of their laptops many years ago that we had a contest, and the audience picked a Ferrari red for me, and I sent my laptop off to the Colorware folks, and it came back this gorgeous red color, and it was spectacular. It was deep, it was vibrant, it was a beautiful job, and I didn't treat that laptop any differently than I treated any other laptop. The colors never faded, they never chipped, I never had any problems with the color whatsoever.
Fuck you, Shawn.
Alrighty then.
I mean, now what am I going to have to do?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to, you know.
I don't think Apple is ever going to do their own colors, if only because those white earpods and those white AirPods are so iconic. You see the white AirPods and you know that's an Apple product. I can't see Apple doing black. I don't think they want to do it. I don't think that they want to color match to gold iPhones or anything else like that. The white ones stand out so much. They've run ad campaigns featuring the white ones. I just don't see them changing the color. So I think if you want purple, you have to go with Colorware.
Yeah, well, and the purple looked gorgeous, I got to tell you. Oh, yeah. And even the flat purple looked gorgeous.
Yeah, they do good work.
You know, everything. God damn you. It would have been so much easier if you would have just said, no, it sucked. It chipped
crap.
the first day. It was crappy color. I ordered Ferrari red, and it
Yeah.
came in pink, and
I actually took my laptop and next to a Ferrari. It was in San Francisco for a Macworld Expo, and we're walking down the street, and there was a Ferrari parked outside of the Moscone Center. I pulled my laptop out, so I wanted to check to make sure it was actually Ferrari red, and it was. It was the exact same. It was a perfectly color match. It was great.
That's just awful. That's awful. That's the worst news I've heard in so long.
The best part about that was that whenever I went through like an airport's security area, and you got to take your laptop out at those days to take your laptop out, I always got comments on it because people would recognize the Apple logo, but they'd see this red color and they were blown away. They had no idea where I got it. The best one was the guy standing next to me asked me about the laptop, and I turned to look at him to talk to him, and it was Jerry Rice of the 49ers.
Oh, damn.
It was so cool. I was sitting there talking to Jerry Rice in the security lineup for like 5-10 minutes. It was freaking fantastic. So,
Did you drop this?
I don't think so.
uh-oh.
Good find.
Someone tried to con you into picking up money?
No, there was a guy just found like $5 on the ground right beside me and asked me if I dropped it, and I said no. It's a fine for him. I should have said yes.
There was an interesting story that came out from
Of course, he looked at me like I was homeless.
Yeah,
and now
well,
Bob is chasing him down the road.
Everyone looks at you like you're homeless. So that's no big deal.
I know.
This is an interesting story, and I want to get your reaction to it. Apple places 20th on the 2017 list of the top companies with the best reputation. That's down. The company's dropped 10 places since 2016. Should that be a concern for Apple? That's a big drop in only a year, and I don't understand what the drop is all about.
Well, and I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
We need to understand what I mean. All of these different polls and things that you have, they're coming up all the time. And I've said before about Apple being number one or Apple being 20th. What goes into that?
Yeah.
And who? These are things I just don't think that we know. So is it a concern? Yeah. Is it good that Apple's number one? Whatever.
Yeah, I think overall
we really don't know.
Yeah. I think overall it may not make a whole lot of difference, but it is something that I wonder if Apple keeps an eye on. If Apple goes, hey, what's up with this? And whether they, ask those same questions of why did we drop? And no, it's just because of the different polling methods, or whether it's in fact something. Because nothing happened in 2016 that you would think hurt their reputation so much. I can see a company moving 2 or 3 spots up or down in any given year, but to drop for 10 spots in that group seems a little upsetting to me. And I read the story, and obviously I didn't get a whole lot of information out because I don't know what their tracking data is, but it was an interesting story just to keep an eye on.
It's like we talked about last week. I mean, Apple's stock price is at an all-time high. What did they do to deserve that?
Yeah.
Well, what did they do to deserve the price drop before that?
Sure.
I mean, to me, it's all just so subjective. Like, people say, oh, well, Apple's not coming out with, a new whiz-bang product. Let's sell. So then Apple stock price goes down. And, oh, we think Apple's going to have a new anniversary iPhone, so let's buy an Apple stock goes up. I don't put much weight in any of it.
Now, I know you have been a fan in the past of Uber, and with the sexual harassment story of last week, and then this story earlier this week of the CEO of Uber losing his goddamn mind on video. Are you still an Uber user?
I've used both Uber and Lyft. Uber has done a lot around the world in getting this type of technology into different cities.
Yeah.
They fought hard to make sure that they get in there, which I respect. I respect them for. But this shit that's going on with sexual harassment and the Uber CEO losing his shit with the driver.
Yep.
There are a lot of different ways that stuff could have been handled, except for the way that he handled them.
Exactly.
How
could I screw this up worse? Here's how.
yeah, that was just it was kind of crazy.
It was just bizarre. And then the thing that got me, it just literally made me laugh out loud reading the line on Twitter. On Tuesday, Uber Technologies Incorporated Chief Executive Officer Travis Kalanick said it was time for him to grow up. Are you shitting me? Don't you think he should have grown up by now, dude? That's just such the lamest excuse I could possibly imagine. Oh, I need to grow up. No, you should have been a grown up before now.
Well, I certainly agree with you, especially running a multi-billion-dollar company. I agree with that statement. But is it the stress of everything else that's going on that led him to that? I'm not trying to make excuses, especially when it comes to the sexual harassment stuff.
Yep.
I mean, there is absolutely no excuse for that whatsoever. But I imagine he's under a lot of stress. He hops into an Uber, a company he owns, and gets told off by the driver. He just, wrongly, he let loose when he should have said, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it. And gotten out of the Uber. He should have even gotten out of block earlier than what he did.
That's right.
And said that. So, I know a lot of people have deleted their Uber apps and canceled their accounts, and people speak with money.
Sure. Yeah.
That's how we speak. Now, like I said, I'm a big Lyft user as well. I love Lyft.
Yeah.
I think Lyft does a great job. The drivers are very friendly. And one thing that I really do enjoy about Lyft is that you're able to leave a tip on Lyft.
Yes.
And I firmly believe, and always have been, paying for good service.
Sure.
So if I have good service from somebody, I would like to see them rewarded for that. And if I can reward them, then I will. When I go to a restaurant, they automatically put a tip on. Oh, that pisses me off.
Yeah, me too.
Don't automatically think that you're good enough. I will judge whether your service was good enough or not.
Now I get when restaurants make they'll add 15% for 8 people because quite often they get screwed on their tips when that happens. But if it's just me and a date or me and another person, and then you automatically add the tip, that's kind of annoying. It happens a lot in Europe, and one of the problems that we have as North Americans is we add a tip anyway. We don't notice it's a service fee, so we basically tip them twice. Which is kind of annoying too, but that's neither here nor there. I don't think that with all the issues that Uber has had, and this is not the first sexual harassment issue that Uber's had. This is not the first time their CEO has said or done something remarkably stupid. I think the company will survive. I don't think it's going to.
Of course they will.
I don't think it's going to go away. I think they pissed off on the people they pissed off are the people they pissed off. The people who are going to use Uber are still going to use Uber, but they've got to get a handle on this stuff. This is just embarrassing to them personally, embarrassing as a company, embarrassing as an organization. They just can't keep running around with like chickens with their heads cut off doing this dumb shit over and over again.
No, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Speaking of dumb shit, you posted this story on the Loop. SpaceX to fly tourists around the moon next year. The dark side of the moon. I'll wait a bit on this trip, you said.
Yeah. No shit.
You wouldn't go?
No way.
Really?
No.
Let's assume the trip is free. Would you go?
No.
Why not?
Because the vehicle that they're sending up has never been flown before.
Well, someone's got to be first.
It's going to blow up. Now, if I had billions of dollars and I could pay for a trip around the moon, or I could stay here and party my ass off, I would stay here every single day. No way. You know what? I would actually pay for somebody else to go if I had billions of dollars. And if they blow up, oh well. But no, I would not go.
The price is estimated to be somewhere between $75 and $100 million per person.
Right.
to get flung off of this planet and thrown further out into space than mankind has gone in the past 40 years.
Right.
If it was free and or if I had the money, if I had Bill Gates money, I think I'd go.
I wouldn't.
I think I would.
Because if you stay here, you're still going to have Bill Gates money. If you leave and that ship blows up, you got nothing.
Yeah, but if it blows up, man, you are world famous. You're dead, but you're world famous.
Look, I'm standing out in the street yelling at you right now about this shit, and people are walking by me. They were going to throw quarters my way, but they're not anymore because I'm talking to myself.
I don't know, man. It's literally the trip of a lifetime. Literally. I mean, if you have this kind of money, you can do any adventure you'd want. You want to go around the world on a plane, you can do it. You want to take the Queen Mary across the Atlantic, you can do it. There's no, the adventure. This is literally the adventure of a lifetime that no one else will get the chance to be first at doing. And that's not something we get to do very often in our lives anymore.
No.
Just no.
Would I test a prototype new Mac? Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Bring that. A prototype new iPhone? Sure. Would I fly in the dark side of the moon with Elon Musk? Fuck you.
I don't see.
Okay, you know what? If Elon went with me, I may be willing to go.
No, I wouldn't want to be trapped in a space capsule with him for a week. No, in that situation, I would definitely not go. If Elon Musk was in there with me, not a chance.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. No. No.
I don't know. I think you gotta go. I think it's something that.
No. That's just stupid. I want to stay here and enjoy my money. I mean, I'm going to be dead soon enough. I don't need that. No.
Oh dear. Okay. All right. Here's something you might be interested in.
Look, a street vendor selling T-shirts just tried to walk up to me, and I'm screaming at myself, and he turned around and walked away.
Well, then you're welcome.
Oh my God!
I'm helping you from the low lifes in the streets of San Francisco.
Oh, Jesus.
This is something I mentioned on The Loop a couple of weeks ago, and I want to get your thoughts on this. With the issues with folks traveling across the border and American Customs Border Patrol guys seem to be not overstepping their bounds, but asking for things like your social media account information and checking your phone. And there was a story today of the Google engineer who had to pass a test to prove that he was a Google engineer. Of course, he was a brown person. With Muhammad Ali Jr. being stopped and asked, are you a Muslim? Even though he's an American freaking citizen holding a U.S. passport. Does that kind of stuff worry you now? You are a Canadian citizen. You travel back and forth. You travel across the U.S. on a regular basis. Does that kind of niggle at you or bother you? Do you worry about your social media footprint because of this kind of issue?
I read an article about this a little while ago, and it said you really don't have any choice but to answer the question.
Yep, that's true.
You really don't. So, I mean, we go back to the whole thing about, a stolen iPhone or whatever. I don't have anything to worry about. And if they wanted to look at my social media stuff, go right ahead. I don't care. But I understand the issue that people have with being forced to do that.
Yeah.
But if you want to come into the country, you don't have a choice.
As long as you are a non-citizen of that country.
Right. So you do have a choice to say, I am not going to give you that information. And their choice then is to say, well, you're not coming in.
Yes.
So you do have a choice. But if you want to come in, you don't have a choice. So, it's something that that people have to make the decision on individually.
Yeah.
On how they want to approach that situation if it ever comes up for them.
Now, as MacMan says, I tell them as a U.S. citizen to FOAD, fuck off and die. If a Canadian immigrant, if I was traveling from the U.S. into Canada and a Canadian immigration or Border Patrol person asked me those same questions, that's exactly what I would tell him. Because they can't stop a citizen of that country from coming home to that country.
You would hope not.
No, not hope not. That's the law. The law is very clear. You cannot stop. You can stop the citizen. You can restrain him. You can hold him for a period of time, but you cannot prevent him from coming into his own country in the U.S. or in Canada. I don't know about other countries, but I know here. Because if you did that, then that person wouldn't have a country to go to. So you can't stop citizens of that country from coming in. You can ask them questions, and you can grill them, and you can put them in a room for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, but you cannot, in the long run, stop them from entering the country. So as a Canadian coming into Canada, I would say exactly the same thing as MacMan does. And I would hope American citizens going into America would do the same thing. The problem is, like Jim said, if I'm a Canadian going into the U.S., we don't have a choice. We literally have no choice.
Or U.S. going to Canada if they ask you the same thing.
That's right. And that's awful. That is utterly awful that they would ask you those kinds of things. Now, that being said, with Apple's comments in the past on privacy and on security, do you think Apple should develop for lack of a better term, a travel mode for iOS where you would basically tell your phone, hey, I'm going out of the country, switch to travel mode, and it would back up your phone, wipe your phone, and then let you go into the country with a clean, pure cell phone, and you would tell the border guys.
Then the border guys would know that, and then they would ask the same questions. Why would you do that? What do you have to hide? No, you're not coming in.
Yeah. There's that too.
It's a no-win situation. You either give them the information they want, or you don't come in. As harsh as that may be, and as some people say, it's the wrong way to do things, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. It's a shame that we've gotten to that point, that for any number of reasons we are now investigating to this degree people who are traveling. There was a story that even domestically, I don't know if you saw the story last week of people arriving at a New York airport on a domestic flight were being stopped and questioned by Border Patrol immigration people as they were getting off the plane. And while the Border Patrol guys said this was all voluntary, it's kind of tough. You've just flown across the country and you get to the front door of the plane. You're tired. You're grumpy. You've been in coach for 6 hours. And there's a guy there who says, show me your papers. He says the equivalent of show me your papers. And you got to show him your driver's license or your passport, whatever it is, to get off the plane.
I didn't know that.
What do you do in that situation?
I don't know. I didn't know that was happening.
Yeah, it's getting a whole lot worse, and it's a real shame that we have to live in this fashion now under these kind of rules and laws, and hopefully they'll lighten up at some point. I understand the security issues, but they don't have to do it this way, I guess is what I'm saying. Folks, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just agreed with you.
Yeah. Folks, I've been talking to Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. He's here each and every week. Thanks, Jim, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Shawn.
Talk to you next week. See ya.
Bye.
Yeah, it's tough. Like as Jim said, you don't have a choice. If we as Canadian citizens are going to the States and a Border Patrol person says, show me this stuff, you don't have a choice. I mean, you're going to the States for a reason. You're going to visit family or friends or on vacation. You've got airfare. You've got all this stuff. You can't just say, nah, I'll go back home. And I think that's what they're counting on, too, is they're counting on people being afraid or intimidated and not wanting to be inconvenienced to that level. And you're hearing it from all kinds of people outside the U.S. who are saying, I'm not going to the U.S. There are stories running in the Indian media. You heard the story of the 2 men who were killed in Kansas simply for being brown. There are several stories I've read in India of Indians saying, we're not going to the U.S. U.S. tourism is down by 10% from European countries in the last 2 months, and it's going to get worse. That's a huge hit. And U.S. tourism is something along the lines of like $1 trillion industry. There's going to be a lot of people losing a lot of money because of this. And it doesn't make us safer. That's the thing. It's what's known as security theater. It doesn't make us safer. It gives you the illusion of safety as opposed to actual safety. And as I said on Twitter, I don't know about in Europe, but anyone who's traveled between Canada and the U.S., we've all got horror stories of Border Patrol guys just being jerks, both U.S. and Canada, for no apparent good reason. They have immense, immense power, especially in the U.S. People don't realize that the Border Patrol has jurisdiction for 100 miles on the inside of the U.S. border. So it's not just at the border they can do this stuff. They can do it for 100 miles around the entire United States. That's why they could do it on a domestic flight in New York City, because that's 100 miles inside the U.S. territory. Border Patrol guys can be, and I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, but they can be, shall we say, overzealous. I've had it happen to me several times over the years. Usually it's a misunderstanding, but it's always a pain in the ass. And now, because of the administration and the policy they put forward, their overzealousness is even more so. If you were a little bit of an asshole before, now you're a gigantic asshole because the government's told you can be. If you were a nice guy beforehand, you're still a nice guy. But if you were a bit of a jerk, you're a real jerk now. So, it's kind of funny. I just did that. There was a story I posted to the Loop. So, how do you stop using filler words? This is an interesting story. And again, I just did it. Because of the explosion of podcasting, we've really noticed this a whole lot more. But it happens all the time. It happens to you. It happens to everyone you know. We all do that thing. And because most podcasters are not professionals, they haven't been trained how to use their voice. They haven't been trained how to speak. They may not speak well. They may not speak clearly. And they may use these filler words. And the filler words are very common. They're universal. Every language has them. And everyone does them. Because the reason why we do it is we're afraid of dead air. We're afraid of not speaking. We're afraid of the other person, when we stop speaking, jumping in and speaking over us. So we use that thing as a placeholder before we say the next thing. For a lot of folks, what happens is they use as they try to think about the next thing they want to say. When I was a kid, up until the time I was about 10 years old, I had an awful, awful stutter. I was a short, fat kid, and I was picked on by all the other kids. I was the fat kid the other kids would beat up on. Literally every day I got beat up. And I had a terrible stutter. I was almost mute because of it. And one of the family friends, and I will never, ever forget him, wonderful man named Brian Tyndall. Mr. Tyndall. We never called him Brian. He was always Mr. Tyndall. Mr. Tyndall took me aside one day, and he said, "I can help you fix your stutter." I was like, "Okay, please do." He said, "One of the ways to fix the stutter is to know what you're going to say before you say it." He said, "Just speak slowly and think about the sentence before you say the sentence. And when you think about it, you'll stutter less." It took a while, with a lot of coaching from him and a lot of reminding from him of, "Shawn, slow down, think about what you're going to say, and then say it." Until I started podcasting, I'm sure I was the same as everyone else with the ums and the like and the you knows. And the first time I listened to myself podcasting, I went, "Oh my God, I sound like an idiot." Don't. Oh, I'm saying it all the time. So here's a little tip for you guys. If you ever need to do this stuff, even if you're doing a guest spot on a podcast or you're doing anything where you want to remind yourself to not do that. What I did was right up here, right next to my camera, I put a little sticky note. And the sticky note said, don't say So whenever I was looking at the camera, I could also see right next to it, this don't say And the easiest way to not say is very simple. It's the easiest trick in the book. If you listen to professional radio people, you'll hear them do this all the time. And I just did it 4 times. Did you hear it? Instead of saying just stop talking. That's the easiest thing in the world to do. But it's really hard. Because when you stop talking, it feels like 10 seconds go by before you start talking again. But if you just stop talking, think about what you're going to say before you say it, your audience will keep listening. No one, in theory, has turned off this podcast in the last minute simply because I've stopped talking for a second or two. So if you want to train yourself to not say not say like, not say just stop talking. It's easy, but it's also really freaking hard. It's not going to happen immediately. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes practice, and it takes thinking about what you're going to say. So those are the 2 little tips that you can use to learn to speak more eloquently. A few questions from folks about mirrorless cameras. Now, mirrorless cameras they're not in between a point and shoot and a full-size DSLR. They are closer to being DSLRs than they are being point and shoots. Physically, they're a little bit bigger than a traditional point and shoot, but internally, they're completely different. They've got different sensors, they've got better sensors, they've got better everything. The thing with mirrorless cameras is mostly people think it's the physical size of a mirrorless camera. And I'll show you. Here is my beloved Nikon D600 with a battery pack on the bottom of it. There's the size difference with the 2 cameras. There's the width difference in the 2 cameras. And there's no comparison. This thing probably weighs 3.5, 4 pounds. This might weigh 1.5 pounds. Huge difference in weight. But there's technical differences in the mirrorless cameras that a lot of folks may not understand. I just want to go through some of these in case you're wondering whether or not you should get a mirrorless camera versus a DSLR. One of the things about a DSLR is that the light comes through the lens and then hits a mirror that's in the body of the camera, bounces up to this thing called a pentaprism in the top, and then comes out the viewfinder. So what that means is you're seeing the light that's coming through the lens. When you look through the viewfinder, you're seeing what the lens sees. When you push the shutter button, that mirror gets up out of the way, the sensor is exposed, light hits the sensor, a picture is created. Then the mirror comes back down. That's that sound you hear. Why is my camera working? I should have checked this beforehand. That's that sound you hear. That's one of the sounds you hear when you push the shutter button on a camera, is the mirror moving up out of the way and then coming back down. Don't do that. So part of that sound was the mirror moving up and out of the way. Well, mirrorless cameras, by their nature, don't have that mirror here. So what happens is when the Light goes through the lens. It doesn't bounce around inside. It goes directly to the shutter. Sorry, it goes directly to the sensor. So when you look through the viewfinder, on DSLRs it's called an optical viewfinder. On mirrorless it's called an electronic viewfinder. So when you look through the viewfinder of a mirrorless camera, you're seeing what the sensor sees, not what the lens sees. So you're seeing the exact same thing as you see on the LCD screen on the back of a camera. The good part about that is when I make adjustments on my DSLR to aperture and to shutter and ISO, I don't see the results of that in the optical viewfinder. But when I make those changes on a mirrorless camera, because I'm seeing what the sensor sees, I can see those changes. So it's really kind of cool. You can hold up your camera and realize that if you look in the viewfinder, either the LCD or the electronic viewfinder, you see your scene is too dark. And you can see it right on the screen. And you can make adjustments right there. And you'll see your screen get brighter or darker depending on the adjustments you make. That doesn't happen on a DSLR through the optical viewfinder. So that can be really handy because you'll know immediately whether or not the picture is going to come out remotely like you expect it to. It is a problem with the DSLR. The DSLR, you've got to know ahead of time how those changes affect the image. If I increase the ISO, what's it going to do? If I decrease the shutter speed, what's it going to do? You don't have to know that with the mirrorless. You can just change those things and go, oh, okay, I see what's happening. It's making it darker, it's making it lighter. The downside of the electronic viewfinder is battery life. The rear screen on your camera, no matter what camera you're using, point and shoot, DSLR, mirrorless, uses up the vast majority of your battery life. So that's why people always say, use your rear LCD as little as possible because that's sucking up the most amount of battery. Your flash is the second thing that uses up the most amount of battery. Now, on a DSLR, because I'm looking through the optical viewfinder all the time, my battery life on this camera, when I go out shooting, I'll charge up my battery on a Friday, and that battery will last me through the entire weekend. And that's probably 1,000 photos and still have plenty left over when I get back home on Sunday. When it comes to a mirrorless camera, I carry around 3 batteries and probably use up all 3 of them over 1,000 shot shoot because it uses up so much battery so fast on a mirrorless camera. It really, really sucks the battery life out of your camera. The physical size of these things is great too. This has got a fairly large lens on it, but you can get a smaller, what's called a pancake lens, a little tiny, let's say 11 by 14 flat lens, and this almost becomes pocketable. You can almost literally put this in your jeans pocket. You're never putting a DSLR in your jeans pocket. These things are always going to be fairly large, fairly bulky, fairly obvious too. And you may not mind that. You may be okay with that. I am, personally. But some folks don't want to be obtrusive when they're taking photos, especially if you're being a tourist. So these kind of cameras look more like a little point and shoot camera. You're less intimidating, especially when you're doing street photography. People are less intimidated by your camera also. The downside is if you're a professional, and I've heard this from people, I've heard stories of people who are wedding photographers who couldn't get work because they're using a mirrorless camera because the bride doesn't think they're a serious photographer because they don't have one of these big beasts. And make no mistake, the mirrorless cameras can take just as good photos as a full-size DSLR. So that's the downside of mirrorless. Upside is much smaller, easier for traveling, really convenient. You get a good camera bag. This is going to be easy to carry around with you for a week when you're traveling through Europe. So physically, these are much smaller. The downside of them being physically smaller is they're not as stable. Because they are so light, it's easier to make a mistake if you're not using a tripod. It's easier to get introduced vibration when you're not using a tripod. I love my great big heavy DSLR because I know when I plant it in my hands, it's going to stay. It's steady. It's heavy, so I hold it more steady. Steadier, more steady. So that's the other side of a mirrorless camera. The other issue is it depends on the lenses. You can start adding fairly large lenses on these things that will make this as heavy as any DSLR. So you may not get the weight benefits if you start putting big monster lenses on these things. The image quality of a mirrorless camera, for the most part, is, I don't want to say as good, but damn close, especially for a beginner. You are going to take damn good photos if you know what you're doing with a DSLR and with a mirrorless camera. The image quality is not that much of an issue when it comes to, certainly in the last 2 years, any mirrorless camera that you bought. You're going to get a good camera that takes good pictures. Again, assuming you know what you're doing. Another thing about mirrorless cameras is that the companies that make these have got some really neat software and hardware features on them. It's only recently that Canon and Nikon have caught up with some of the things that have been in mirrorless cameras and point and shoots for years. For example, this one has got a flip out screen. So that screen flips down like that, which is really kind of convenient if you wanted to get over the head shots. So the screen there is now at a 45-degree angle, which means I can lift it up over a crowd, and because I'm looking through the viewfinder, can see what the camera sees down. So I can get some interesting angles. The reverse is true if you flip it the other way. You can look down, so you can put the camera down at like knee level and look down and see the screen. And so you get another interesting angle. It's only been recently that Canon and Nikon have come up with that on their consumer level cameras. And I don't believe any of the pro cameras have a screen that flips out in any kind of way. The other great thing about mirrorless cameras is when it comes to technology, is a lot of them have got some really neat Wi-Fi connectivity or Bluetooth connectivity. This camera allows me to use the Olympus software on my iPhone or my iPad and see what the camera sees and shoot remotely. So I can put this on a tripod somewhere and then stand away from the camera and take pictures. I can tap on the screen and take pictures on my iPad screen or my iPhone screen. The other thing is, a lot of these cameras, the LCD screen in the back is also a touch screen. So I can actually tell the camera where I want to focus by touching on the screen. Again, it's only been recently that Canon and Nikon, in their consumer level cameras, have caught up to what Sony and Panasonic and Olympus and who's the other one? No, there's 4. Sony, Panasonic, Olympus, there's one other that have gotten really good at mirrorless cameras. One of the downsides of mirrorless cameras is individual companies don't have the lens selection of Canon and Nikon. Canon and Nikon have been around for 100 years. Nikon just is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. And they've been making lenses for a very, very long time. Olympus, so I think last time I read, Nikon had 179 different lenses, whereas Olympus has 57. Now, the advantage is, because these cameras are what are called micro four thirds cameras, a lot of the times, the other companies that also make micro four thirds cameras have the same lens mount. So I can take my Olympus camera and buy a Panasonic lens and attach it to my camera, or a Sony micro four thirds camera and attach it to my lens. So lens availability is not nearly as much of an issue as when these things first started. So I have them on my list. Shutter lag used to be a really big thing back in the days of point and shoot. You'd push the the shutter button, and it would take anywhere from a quarter to half to a full second before the picture was actually taken. It's still a bit of an issue with mirrorless cameras, but it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. DSLRs are still better at that, but as you become a better photographer, that shutter lag is really only important in moving images. And as you become a better photographer and you practice more, you can anticipate the moving images. You can never see the image then take the picture. You've got to see the image before it happens, get ready to take the picture, and then anticipate the shot. So shutter lag is not that much of an issue. Startup speed can be. For example, this camera is off now. To turn it on, let's see how fast it takes to go from off to on. That's not bad. That was maybe half a second. Some cameras are better and worse than that, but it's a minor issue. A big issue for some photographers is the fact that these mirrorless cameras, none of them, as far as I know, have dual slots for cards. That may not be a big deal, but you'd hate for your SD card in your camera to go bad while you were shooting. You'd lose all those photos. So a lot of the higher end prosumer cameras like this Nikon D600 have two slots inside. You see those two blue lines. Those are my two slots. And what that does, it gives me a lot of flexibility. So for example, I have my camera set up to shoot both RAW and JPEG, put the RAW files on one card, put the JPEG files on the other card. Or you could do RAW and JPEG on one card, RAW and JPEG on the other card, so as a full backup. Or you could do one card that would take all those photos, and the second card would be an overflow card. You get a lot of flexibility when it comes to that kind of stuff on the full-size DSLRs. Another downside of mirrorless cameras, they're getting better, but when it comes to really low light situations, the focus on them is quite difficult. It doesn't do a great job, depending on the camera, of low light autofocus. Now, low light you can do manual focus, but low light autofocus, these things tend to have a bit of an issue. Same with high speed autofocus. I don't know of any sports photographer, a Sports Illustrated type photographer, who uses a mirrorless camera, because high speed autofocus still isn't up to snuff on these cameras. But if you don't need high speed autofocus, it may not be that much of an issue for you. So keep that in mind. If you're thinking about a new DSLR, go into your local camera store and play around with and feel a Sony or a Panasonic or a Olympus. They make really good cameras. And the weird thing is, Nikon and Canon don't have really good mirrorless cameras. They have the best DSLRs, but they're a generation or two behind the Panasonics and the Sonys, and the Fuji was the other company, Fuji and Olympus, when it comes to mirrorless cameras. So if you're brand agnostic, you don't care what the brand name of your camera is, at least take a look at mirrorless cameras next time you're thinking about buying a camera. Again, go into the store, see how they feel, because one of the things I always tell folks is you have to see how a camera feels. For example, this Olympus M1 is a fantastic camera spec-wise. This is a wonderful camera spec-wise, but physically, it's too small for me. I find my fingers just feeling really cramped with this camera, and for long shoots, I found this to be very uncomfortable. Whereas my great big Nikon, my whole hand fits over here. It fits very comfortably. The buttons in the back are in places that are very easy and comfortable for me to find. So while I'm not a full-time mirrorless user, you might be. If you have any questions about cameras in general, photography in general, you guys know I'm always happy to answer any questions you might have. Send me emails to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com, and I will do my best to answer any camera-related questions that you might have. Let's see what I do have on the list for things. Oh, again, I want to remind you guys, I always feel bad reminding you guys about this stuff, but I have to. This is my job. So if you'd like to support Your Mac Life, if you'd like to support StartingPointPhotography.com, please go to the website at YourMacLifeShow.com. Left-hand side, you can subscribe to Your Mac Life for $2, $5, $10, $15 a month, whatever you so choose. You don't have to sign up for PayPal. It comes out of your credit card or out of your PayPal account. Money comes to me, and I send it off to pay bills. That's the easiest way to describe it. The other thing is, if you want to take a camera class with me, I'm happy to do that. Please let me know. We can do it via Google Hangouts, exact same Google video you guys are watching now. It's live. It's not a pre-recorded video. It's live. You'll be able to ask me questions directly. It's about a 2-hour class, and there's 2 classes. One class is how to take better pictures no matter what camera you have. So even if you only have an iPhone, I can teach you how to take better pictures. Or if you've got a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, there's a class on how to get the best out of your DSLR or mirrorless camera. I just got a message in our Slack chat room from our good friend Mo. He says, the live class is fun. I can attest to that. Well, thank you very much, Mo. I appreciate that. It is fun. I'll be the first one to say that. It's a blast. I'm a funny guy. So please let me know. It's $75 for 2 hours. It's a great deal. So send me an email to Shawn at YourMacLifeShow.com. Got an email from Joe West. Which company makes the best lenses for a Nikon DSLR, Tamron or Sigma? Interesting you didn't ask about Nikon, Joe. Generally speaking, Nikon makes the best lenses for Nikon cameras. Canon makes the best lenses for Canon cameras. It's only because they own the camera technology. They know their own cameras inside and out. So in general, they're going to make the best lenses. But those lenses are also, especially in the high end, very, very expensive. As I've always said, my favorite lens is the Nikon 2470 f2.8, and it's like $2,000. But the Tamron 2470 f2.8 is about $1,000, $1,200. Significant price difference. Same with the Sigma version of that lens. Tamron and Sigma both make really good lenses. If you don't need the Nikon brand name, you're not going to go too far wrong when it comes to a Tamron or a Sigma lens for your Nikon or for your Canon. Generally speaking, I would say they're about 90% of the lens. A Tamron Sigma is 90% of the equivalent Nikon lens for between half to 2/3 of the price. Or sorry, half to 1/3 of the price. So you're getting a lens that's almost as good as the native brand name lens for significantly less money. Snobs will tell you, oh, I only ever buy Nikon lenses. Okay, that's fine for you. But if you're on a budget or you don't need that extra 10%, which you might not even notice, give a look at to a Tamron or a Sigma. There's no one who's going to say that Tamron is always better than Sigma or Sigma is always better than Tamron. These are third-party manufacturers who make lenses for Nikon and Canon. Tamron may make a single lens that's better than the equivalent Sigma and vice versa. The best thing to do, as always, is to check reviews on websites. dpreview.com is my favorite one to get reviews from. So go to that website, do a search for that Tamron or Sigma lens, and see what they say. And see what they say is the best version of that lens that you are thinking about getting. But you're not going to go too far wrong. I don't remember if I don't think Michael Koulis. Michael is in Richmond, Illinois. Hey, Shawn, been enjoying going through the archives recently. Just went back to the Mac family with a 2015 13-inch, excuse me, 128 gigabyte Mac Air Best Buy had for $800. I've missed the experience. Your podcast has been playing for 9 of the 10 hours I'm at work. That's kind of cool. Perhaps a daily version of Your Mac Today show is in order. He says, my favorite lens is actually the Nikon Series E100 manual focus on my Nikon D80. I'm an avid birder, and I find the clarity and aperture at 2.8 to be a great lens option. I crop what I can with my feet, and I've loved the results. So much, I actually sold my nifty 50 lens, and I never use it. Thanks for the great podcast. All the best, Michael in Richmond, Illinois. Interesting, Michael, that you are a manual focus guy. There's not too many folks you're using a Nikon D80, which is a fairly old camera. And that Nikon Series E100 manual focus lens is probably a great lens for that. An avid birder shooting with a manual focus, that's really interesting because usually, depending on the kind of bird photography you're shooting, you're often, not often, but maybe you're not taking shots of birds in motion or birds in flight because that'll be a little harder with that manual lens. But Michael, send me some pictures of your shots. I'd love to see manual focus shots. That's actually kind of cool. I think that's it for the show tonight, folks. Thank you guys for... Oh, hang on. No, sorry. I just got an email from... who's this from? I got to look for the email. Anthony. Yeah, geez. Why are emails hidden like that? Anthony asked the question, how are the quality of the refurbished laptops Apple sells? I was thinking about buying a refurb laptop and was curious. I have bought several refurbs from Apple, both for myself and for the show and for friends. Never had a problem with them. Apple refurbs, I would say, are as good as the brand new version. And you can tell because Apple charges almost as much. Refurbs from Apple, you're not generally getting a huge discount from them. It's not like a used car that you're going to get 25% off. You get 10, 15% off an Apple refurb, depending on which version you're looking for. But if you're worried about the quality, you've got no problem at all when it comes to quality. I've never had an issue with them. If you do have an issue, get Apple Care. If you can afford it, get Apple Care on the machine because Apple offers the full warranty on those refurb products. Monty says, Shawn's a big guy. Mirrorless camera looks like a toy being held up with someone with hands that big. Yes, that's right. It's always funny when I'm watching myself on video. It doesn't feel that way from here, but I look at myself here. It's like, yeah, that's a little toy camera. It's just a little toy camera. But again, if you're thinking of buying a new camera, check out mirrorless cameras. They're pretty doggone good. That's it, folks. I want to say thanks very much, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining me here each and every week. And a special big, huge thank you to you guys for being tuned in to the show, whether you're tuned in live or listening to the archive. Until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!